Welcome to TAMA Talks, brought to you by the Torrance Art Museum Advocates. I'm Janine Madden, current TAMA president, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Today, we will be discussing work which is currently on view in the main gallery at the Torrance Art Museum in a show called Studio System, an Experimental Residency Project. The Studio System Experimental Residency Project is a unique attempt to bridge the gap between artistic practice and the public. First held in 2015, Studio System seeks to bring the dynamism of the artist studio into the museum space, encouraging audiences to not only see works as they are in progress, but to interact with the artist to discuss inspirations, sources, thoughts, feelings, content, and context, as well as chart the progression of the works over the month-long period that the project encompasses. The exhibition is on view through June 29th and culminates in a closing reception on that date from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. This reception is open to the public and we invite you to attend. The museum is located at 3320 Civic Center Drive in Torrance, California, and is open Tuesday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Admission is always free and donations are gratefully accepted. This discussion is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel with all of our previous TAMA Talks. You can access it from our website at www.tamadvocates.com. Joining us today is Studio System resident artist Craig Knight. Craig gained his BA Fine Art from Hull College of Higher Education and Professional Graduate Certificate in Education Fine Art from St. Martin's, Lancaster. He is a figurative painter with eclectic interests ranging from comics, graphic novels, and graffiti to fine art and philosophy, as lowbrow and highbrow as possible. His paintings develop organically as a part of a problem-solving process to gain the illusion of control and deal with personal feelings, social relationships, and the structure of memories. They attempt to communicate a shared sense of being. Crowded neopop imagery is employed as metaphor for conceptual confusion, joy created in the dialogue between artist and audience, sharing references, meaning, and confusion. By sourcing imagery from pop culture, he hopes to reflect upon the nature of our constructed identity and evolving self. Though oil is his favorite medium, lately he has started using acrylic, spray paint, and marker for their immediacy. He has exhibited nationally and internationally, and we are thrilled to have him join us today to discuss his work as part of the Studio System residency at the Torrance Art Museum. So thank you very much, Craig, for coming on. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you very much. I'm over the moon to be here. It's a great opportunity and I'm really enjoying it. Interacting with the other artists and the public it's been eye-opening. It's been great.
Fantastic, fantastic. So you were kind enough to send some images along, and I am going to cycle through. So this was an image that was taken at the TAM. And so just briefly, can you describe your impression of what Studio System has been since the first day that you had an opportunity to start creating in the space?
Yes, it was it's a unique opportunity. I don't think anybody else is doing it in the whole of the world. And that is, it's bringing in artists and telling them to be experimental in the studio and to develop what they want to. So it's not a focus on the outcome, as most galleries are, the product, the end result. It's actually the process of getting there. So for me, it's been a great opportunity just to think about my practice, to consider, and there's been a total lack of pressure, apart from the final show where we were told it's, you don't even need to produce something. It's about you thinking about the process and interacting with others and once again the public, which I particularly wanted to do because you can get very isolated in your studio by yourself, and I think I've welcomed this opportunity with open arms.
Fantastic. So you come in, you come into the space, and you come in with a blank canvas, And so do you have an idea before you begin what it is that you are going to want to create?
No, because I see the process a bit like a game of chess. If I'd have come with preconceived ideas, I'd have had a design ready and just sort of colored it in essentially, and that would have been. I didn't think that that was where I wanted to go. I was born in America, and I left very early, before I was 10. So I spent my whole life in England, and so for me it was like a prodigal son returning, but times have changed. It's no longer home. Um, so I wanted to look around and see things that resonated with coming back to America. In a sense, if you are returning home, how does it feel? And there was a massive disconnect. I found the freeways very scary, and people driving. When I say on the wrong side of the road and the wheels on the wrong side of the car, it's uh, but I wanted to look at certain things without being kitschy about looking at Americana. So there was a lot of things I was looking at, like the American police helicopter, which people call a ghetto bird, uh, the fire hydrant, the chewing gum, as you'll probably see later, the chewing gum sticks, Ridley's spearmint and double mint. Um, all of these things started playing into it. So these were the initial response to coming to America. Um, then I wanted to get enough work together, so I was working on them all together, so I could work on them simultaneously. Because as my ideas developed and they became a little bit more like therapy, where I was thinking a bit deeper about the issues and what it meant, how I felt, and what I was seeing, and how I was responding. I wanted that to develop, so they will be done by the 29th, but it'll have been a journey from the starting point to the end result, and the meaning of the work will have changed considerably in that time.
And I think that was my understanding of it is basically you've just kind of summed up what the whole, what the whole process was, what the whole intent of the show was.
Mhm.
That sort of evolution. So, okay, so these are the images that you just were referencing.
Yeah, they were the initial work that almost featuring the objects I wanted to look at, but even the meaning of the object starts to alter. I mean, like, for example, the fire hydrant caught my eye, and I started to think about it, and then I realized I saw it as very humanistic, like a little Lego man. So on one hand, it represented sort of good government and good engineering, because they're doing something that saves the community and has a good function. So it's a very positive thing. And then I realized that I liked it in a sort of, as I said, in a humanistic Lego man way. So I thought of it going on an adventure. So I gave it a friend. And then I realized that related to me and my family and me and my brother type thing, who were close. And he's in America and I'm in England. And we would go off in an adventure. And then I thought, yeah, but I don't want to recreate total reality. So I didn't put a neighborhood in. I just had them going away somewhere. So that's how it started. And the same thing with the chewing gums, where it was very Andy Warhol, uh, very Americana. This inviting choice between the two sticks of gum, where you think, yeah, people will respond. And I wanted that to pop out with the yellow. And so I did start with the sort of objects, and then start to think about them deeper than just the straightforward. This is like a Campbell's soup tin. Or this is it's what it suggests to me, and ideas can flow from these. I would say they're lovely beginnings to the work, and then you sort of respond to them and start to think a bit more deeply about it, and how it. What do you want to say, apart from, I don't want to just say to people, look, come, I don't want to recreate just a Warhol statement that was very positive, but that's where it started from. That's where it started at, rather, and then developed in my mind. So it's a sort of stage one, then stage two, and then hopefully, because we're halfway through, maybe there's a stage three to come, and then they'll be resolved but hopefully you'll see that in the sort of later versions of them.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure that we have some that Joran at the TAM is able to go around and take some images, or when folks go out to the closing reception, I'll have them share what they see, because it will be really interesting to see that progression and what the final image looks like when it's completed. Have you had a chance to go out to Catalina? You had the Wrigley's, and so Catalina Island is the Wrigley's place. So I didn't know if you did that intentionally.
Oh, yeah, I've been going to a lot of different places around America just to have a good look around. It's been quite eye-opening just to sort of see different places, and the architecture is different. The freeways are scary.
They are. They
But
are.
I will
I
say,
agree.
I will say this, that I found everybody very friendly, which I really like. So Americans have got a kind of an upbeat attitude to them, and they're quite friendly. Even when it's late at night and I'm going for a late night walk, everybody's, they pass you and say hi, how are, just carry on. And it's been really positive that way as well.
Wonderful. All right, let's continue on. So this is the 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 fire hydrant piece, and this is going to continue to be expanded, you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Have we got images of the later version of that?
Let me see. This is where, oh, there you go. Okay. So this is the most recent image that I have.
Yes. So what I realized is that, for example, I like the two fire hydrants being humanized and going off on an adventure. Uh, but I realized that I started thinking long and hard about England's fire hydrants, and I thought, I don't see them. And I wondered if I'd gone like blind to them. You know how something's there every day, so you don't see it. You come to somewhere in another country and it's painted yellow, and you suddenly notice it. So this idea that you are opening your eyes to looking at things because you're in a new place, and there's a weird disconnect of me coming here and going, oh look, that's different from home. Uh, and then I had to go onto the internet and check. And what we've done is we've recessed them into the ground now, so we don't have fire hydrants. We
Oh,
Yeah, so there aren't any fire hydrants, and I kind of went, oh, there was a gap in, and as I say, a lot of it has become about that disconnect that this is no longer home. I don't understand the codes and the ways of acting and ways of meaning, and that weird disconnect where you think, look, I've come home, but it's no longer home. That's tricky. So I sort of pixelated the image. So almost like I'd gone colorblind, digitized it into a screen, and of course that created that space of the screen. And then I thought about the journey they were on, and I started to add in the smiley faces. But if you look closely at smiley faces, it contains Fallout Boy, their logo, the corporate Vault Boy logo. If you
okay,
just
right.
smiley face, and in the smiley face, it's hidden there with that very positive smiley face, but you realize that the Vault Boy from Fallout is a very weird image because he's so lovely and pleasant, but he actually hides the fact that the Vault Corp they're actually the most evil corporation out, and nuked America so that they could live in vaults and experimented on people. So it's a bit weird that I chose a sort of like in that traffic light of red, yellow, and green, which they are, this idea that future, you've got a very negative future if you go down the Vault Boy road of politics where they're telling you one thing and it's another. So I kind of put that there to sort of stop my two adventurers, and they can look at the traffic lights. And not that I know anything about American politics. I mean, as the outsider, I wouldn't come here and tell Americans how to vote and what to do. But I remember thinking that the world seems to be in a very precarious situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think in knowing that, it certainly adds a gravity to the piece that unless you knew that, unless, it's one of the reasons why we wanted to continue to do these and have artists come on and give a little background, because it serves two functions. One is if you don't have the opportunity to come to the museum, like I'm far away, that I get a chance to see the art and hear the artist's perspective on it. But also, if you're planning on seeing it before the end of the show and they come on a day when you might not be there, providing a little bit of background, I think, for the piece. And they all take a degree of looking, they all take a moment to stand in front of them and absorb them and read past the labels.
Particularly with my work, where I actually play the game with, because it's enjoyable and it can be very, very funny. You can almost have this guilt that you go, oh, it can't mean a lot because it's just funny. And then you realize there's a lot of meaning, there's a lot of narrative. You've got to watch it that you're not going, oh, that's easy. Because the funnier you get or the easygoing you get, the more you can have that, there's a conflict there. And you realize that for myself, it's already allowed. Do I want this work to become more about politics, or do I want it to become about my relationship with my family and my brother particularly, or just people in general, forming relationships in, it's one thing, being worried about how objects function within the community and how we can become blind to them as another. What are you looking at and why are you looking? So in the moment, I'm looking at that and wondering about the political stance of it and saying, where do I go with the journey? Because like the arrow is like a one-way arrow. You have it going one way up the street, but it's also the arrow off the Wrigley spearmint gum on the end where you tear it. So you start to refer to each other. It could have a set of meanings where you go, but it's all about the signs and symbols and meanings, how you access them. Like if you don't know the computer game Fallout and you don't know the TV series Fallout, or you don't know that Vault Boy is actually an incredibly corporate evil at its worst, he's a very friendly figure. You might go, oh, I really like him. And you go, yeah, but do you know what he represents? And they go, and somebody says, no. So it is about, what you recognize and what you don't recognize, what you understand as a reference and what you don't. And then I play with that happy, it's a smiley face. Is it just me being flippant and silly, or is it actually telling you, why don't you look past the smiley face and see the other face that's also smiling, but it's not a good image in that sense. So it is a game. And as I said before, I play it like a game of chess, that I kind of go, oh, am I being too negative? Do I need to be positive? Do I take it in a political direction or a personal direction? What is the nature of the game that is painting for me? And it'll be resolved, and maybe sometimes half resolved. I don't think you definitively come to end results where I'm going to put the world right in a painting. I don't think that's going to happen. So that's why I'm wondering where it's going to go.
Well, and you sort of speak to us a very interesting question, which is how much of the work that you have created that is a reflection of your own, thoughts and feelings on a particular topic. How much of it do you feel you need to explain?
Yeah,
Max's work is a perfect example of that. There's so much in it that he was on last week or so, and he talked about the piece that he had in Culturide, and he sort of went through the different elements of it, and it was very, very helpful, like in your piece, to be able to understand what all those elements mean, because like you said, I might just only see the smiley faces, and like we were saying in your biography, that sense of confusion, that idea of it's obviously a very conflicted image.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I don't want to do is to illustrate. So what you can't, in a sense, oh, if I choose a series of images and pop them together, you can read it like a book somehow. There is also the engagement with painting itself. So the mark making and the process can become something that takes over. And you think, well, if, for example, how do I paint confusion? What if I start putting thick paint, thin paint, and you say, well, what's the meaning of that? And you say, well, I'm taking you back to the surface. This is a painting, and the surface process is part of what it's all about. Because I don't think that there is a finite number of ideas where I'm saying, oh, I'm saying this to you. I may as well write that down on a piece of paper and say, and to be honest, I don't know where it's going, because I started with, one thing, it led me to another, which led me to another, which makes me think of others. And you really think, so the computer, like I said, the game, why would I play a game of chess if I knew the outcome? It would ruin it for me. So I'm looking at that now and going, what does it really need next? What do I need to tell you next? And whenever you're talking to a, God knows how many people are going to observe that, it's what they know and what they bring to it. So I've had people tell me they've looked at my work and say, I got this out of it. And I think, never occurred to me. But now you've said it, it does. So do I then take that into account and add some more? And the question then would be, could I go on forever? You know, if it's like a conversation where you just add more and more and more, and then you think, right, if I am hoping for a dialogue with the public and the public are responding to this, it is a very serious concern for me that they see it as real art. And that whole, when it becomes like when I had street art aesthetics in there and they go, oh, I recognize the cartoon character or whatever. Is it that it becomes trivial because it's enjoyable or fun? And the answer is no. I'm trying to mix them together. So I've got the stenciled Fallout Boy against the drawn object from observation, against the realism of it, and whether it functions as a painting. At the moment, I'm starting to consider, does it do enough in terms of bringing you to the surface and making you think it's a painting? So it might have impasto paint dragged across it next, just to tell you, look, come back to the surface.
Right, yeah. This is a painting.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue with your, okay, so this was the piece that we saw with the devilment, and now we're noticing that this is the arrow.
Yeah, that's definitely where I took it from. And as you say, early days, you're getting an Americana approach type thing. As I said, very similar to pop art and the Warhol's soup tin, Campbell's soup tin. It's meant to pop off the canvas with the yellow. And I kind of liked it at that stage, but felt it didn't do enough. I think if your pop art was then, we have to at least go into neo-pop. We have to look into saying more than our ancestors have done. So while I admire it, it has its place in history and time. So if I'm going to say something new, I needed to add to that. So obviously I did.
Yeah, just sort of an evolution. Okay, so here's the next iteration. Is there more to it? Is there more coming after this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I thought that the background looked a bit like sky because there was brushstrokes in it. So I've flattened that out a lot, but added slightly darker. And what it's done is I've made an edge around her so she glows even more. When I've darkened the moment, I like the street art stencil of the piglet, but once again, Piglet is so cute and friendly and nice that he brings a sort of level of trivia and enjoyment, and people will then go, oh, they really do focus on it and go, oh, I like that little piglet. And you go, yeah, but remember, it's not just about fun. It's got a deeper meaning to it. And I think I can overdo that sometimes. Like I put observe because I wanted you to know that she was observing the work, because I added the woman at the gallery seeing work and appreciating it and wanting to capture it. So I added her in there. And I think there was a bit of me going, come on, do a figure, because people recognize that sort of good art. I made her very dark, and then I turned around and put observe in her. And I think I was using a sledgehammer to crack a nut to tell you, look, she's observing type thing. And I think sometimes you can be a bit obvious and a bit, and I kind of looked and thought, you don't really have to tell people she's observing. It's obviously she's observing, yeah, but I put it here anyway. Maybe it would balance the pink from one end to the other. So you've got a strong diagonal from one corner to the other.
And also you bring up a really interesting, as I look at the piece, you bring up a really what's the word I'm looking for? I'm just going to say interesting, but that's not the right word. An interesting idea, which is, and one of the things I notice, like when I'm in a gallery or museum, is that, is she really observing? I mean, I like the idea that you put observe on there, because oftentimes, particularly with the use of the phone, you see people kind of just taking pictures and they're really not looking. They're
The,
just
the,
taking a picture. They're not really standing in front of a piece for not even 1 minute.
yeah, I think there is an odd disconnect there. Whether I kind of thinking about, is she enthralled? Is she enjoying it? Is it like you said, if it's just taking a snap and you go, oh, I've got that. No, you
Right.
didn't. I mean, I once sat in a museum looking at Rothko, and I think I must have stayed in there for an hour to 2 hours. And I really appreciated it loads more because I really wanted to see it. And the depth of them is unreal. I
Yes.
started to think I could step into them if I physically could actually step over into them. Um, but I think there was a level of almost imposter syndrome where I felt that the two sticks, the gum packets, couldn't stand on their own without you kind of doing something. And then I thought about the idea of, do we observe and do we appreciate and do we see? And if I add that in, the idea that we're observing the observing, and we're looking at observing and seeing if they observe. And it's
Right.
almost like
Right.
that. How do I do another layer of we're observing, And if I brought you back to the canvas once again, am I thinking of adding some kind of painterly techniques that make you think once again it's back to the surface? Um, I put the spray thing on, the idea of no recycling as a sort of like street aesthetic where you see this either functionally or with street artists where you can't recycle the ideas anymore. You can't be producing a Warhol now that Warhol's done it beautifully. So it was kind of a little warning that, your pop arty stuff, and then the stars giving the almost the thumbs up, like a rating system that she's gone to 4, possibly suggests there's room for another. So she thinks it's a 4 out of 5. And of course I started playing with the depth of it because I like the idea of looking like a canvas with space. So I'm creating some space in there. You got some perspective going on, and by attaching her to the picture frame where she's glowing, it's the idea that she is taking it in. At least she's. But I was thinking about writing up the side of putting text on enthralled. She had tried for the moment type thing, and you think once again though, are you overdoing it? Are you putting it? I mean, do I have to tell the audience exactly what my intentions were because they were so set in stone? I don't think. I think art's a much more poetic language than otherwise. I just write it down and say, there you go. But the game is, when have I gone too far? How much do I need to add? I think of it like when a chef makes a really good meal and it's 3 really good ingredients. If you start with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you will spoil it. But if you do them well, those ingredients blend together and you kind of got something that's cool and nice and you think, yeah, that's worked. So the question with it is, I'm looking at it going, what if I put another element in? What if I do a bit more? What if I wreck it by, overplaying my hand and also being too obvious? If you tell people, I think they need to work. I think
Right.
they
Right.
need.
I mean, that's an important aspect of contemporary art in particular, is that it does take time. Even though things are recognizable in this piece, it does still take time for a person to stand in front of it and realize that this isn't a photograph. I mean, this is painted piece. And so, again, I think, like you said, they have requiring the viewer to, as you say, work at it or look at it, just look, observe, as you've said, I think speaks volumes. So,
I think they become part of the work. I don't know why resonates with me, but there was a picture of a guy who was removing graffiti, and he removed it, and the next day he came there, it was a picture of him. So the graffiti guy had to remove the graffiti of himself, and you think, but that introspection, where you realize everything's a spectacle and a stage. I think if I've mixed those ingredients right, and people start to observe it and want to read it, and they understand the nature of what it's trying to get at, then I've done my job and I can move on. And I might like it. The problem, of course, is that's always the problem with the artist. Is he sees all the mistakes, he or she sees all the mistakes, all the problems, and you worry that are people getting it? Are people understanding it? Will people appreciate it? And as I said, the imposter syndrome is you make something and somebody might go, well, it's fun, it's trivial, it's a good laugh, but yeah, that's it. And I often look at other people's artworks and I think they look so serious. and they look like, you've got to really read them. And then I think look at mine and go, oh, is it? I'm playing with that, the lightweightness of it against the how much do you know and how much do you want to talk about it? Because I'm hoping it's just as readable as any other piece.
Right. You insert that whimsy, but at the same to make it less serious, but at the same time, you are saying that it is still equally as serious.
Yes, and I mean, that may be achieved by, for example, if I drag some impasto paints in certain directions on it and just bring you back to surfing, you think, hold it, what's he trying to achieve here? Because he's playing with stencils, he's playing with realism, he's playing with like almost cartoon versions or very easily painted things like the chewing gum, but he's also he's obviously been thinking about what the end result is, and hopefully people get that and go, oh yeah, now I get it, I see where he's coming from.
I don't think I ever knew that both the double mint and spearmint were sugar free. So I
Somebody
just looked at
said,
your.
yeah, somebody said that they're not sugar free. I'm thinking, aren't they? Because I
I,
thought, yeah, and then I could be wrong. And
I never thought that they were. I thought that they were really like normal sugary gums. So how funny is that? Interesting.
you often
All
find
right.
that you think something's right, and then suddenly somebody
Well,
says not, and you kind of go,
right, and it sort of speaks to what you were saying earlier about this idea that, oh my gosh, what if all these years the package does say sugar-free gum on it? And like you said, we just never have ever looked at the package long enough to see what it said. So,
sitting there thinking if you have them in front of you and you start eating through them and you chew them and then you get rid of, because partly it was, I remember eating gum when I was a kid. I haven't met gum in years, but I remember thinking, oh yeah, I used to like it. So it was comforting and nostalgic and friendly. I mean, you share gum was a particular thing I remember. You had 5 sticks in a packet and they would all go, and there'd be at least 5 of you or 2 of you or whatever, and you'd get through them. So it was a very comforting return to America, easygoing. And then, as I say, it develops. Do I take it off in a negative direction? Because being older and wiser, if we can think like that, the longer I paint it, does it have more and more political and weird meanings that come out, and it becomes darker and darker until eventually it becomes quite a depressing piece. Hopefully, it's still happy and easygoing, and it asks a few questions and does it in, I think, quite a lightweight. I think it's quite light.
all right, let's. Okay. Oh, this is the. Tell me again what the slang was for this.
Ghetto bird is the one I go.
I see. I see. Okay.
Ghetto bird. I was consider I like the good solid image of the helicopter, but if you look at it, it's painted quite lightly. Um, it represents in my mind the idea of how you respond to enforcement. Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? And then I kind of wanted it to sort of while whirring above the background, whether it looks like it's going to crash. And then I didn't want a cityscape or anything that too defined. So I kind of just want it to look like it can. Is it going to come down? Is it going to stay up? Um, So I'm really thinking what else it needs. I am thinking of the bottom half. I want something in there that represents people and urban environments, and we can decide whether we like the police being there or we don't. And then paradoxically, it's always a problem that I want there to be law enforcement to make sure we are safe from criminal elements. But on the other hand, it's never been that great that you feel 100% trusting of, you
Correct.
know, what do you do when it keeps you awake. Say, for example, you'll hear them and they're waking you up and you're kind of a bit annoyed, but are you also thinking, oh God, something terrible is happening because they're involved? Secondly, if they're involved, am I safe? Are they helping me or hindering me? What does it mean? And so many people are, you know, and it's paradoxical where you have to think, right, okay, what does it mean to me? And
Right.
do I need to resolve that? Because I
Right.
don't think it's ever going to be resolved. I think that's always going to be the issue of whether they are protecting and serving or oppressing a community. I think they've
Sure.
always.
It's that public safety versus abuse of power.
Yeah, I think it'll always be there.
Powerfully.
So I'm thinking about what else it needs. As you can see, I haven't put any stencils on that yet, or anything else. But because it's on hardboard, on canvas with hardboard, I could actually screw things into it, like science stuff and stuff like that. You know,
Ah, okay.
I'm
Okay.
open now. I do like your street signs. You see, you have some pretty cool street signs, and I remember thinking, even if it said something along the lines of just a stop sign, you'd think, well, stop what? Stop the police? Stop going there? Are you being told an instruction, which is stop? Or are they being told to stop? You know, and I think questions will arise, but I don't want to run into that one because I think if you start to be flippant with something as serious as that, it can become a problem.
Okay. Let me see something first. Oh, okay. I reversed these, so we'll do this one first.
Okay.
Um, okay. So this is the original, and this is where it is.
Right.
Maybe not now, but
Yeah, it's
uh,
gone deeper than that. I've been working on it this morning, so it's changed a lot.
okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. The original was because when I was, as I said before, I was born in America. One of the toys we were given as a second-hand toy was the Lone Ranger. And I think that toys are incredibly important because children through play uh, will will create that as a role model. So how a man should act. And he said some important things like all men are created equal. He said things like, you know, you have to stand up for yourself. You don't kill people. You know, there was a lot of things that I remember the Lone Ranger being this. He did the right thing. So that when you're playing and you're absorbing this idea that I'm the good guy, um, he represented in a sense that the father figure, the learning about being male, to me, and I really liked having it as a toy. I'm into I'm into action figures. They're not dolls; they're action figures. So for me, this was going back into the past. It was particularly American, you know, the Lone Ranger. So I wanted that, and then once again, thinking of my first thing about the adventure of the two characters and the fact me and my brother used to play with this figure, I then doubled him up so he had a friend. And I think this is possibly this reference, once again, the meaning of the work becomes a little bit more altered, where you think, okay, that's me and my brother, me and my older brother, and we are both the Lone Ranger, and I'm the small version. You know, I'm the
In the
one.
back.
Yeah, and you realize if they were, and then it developed even more. And I remembered my dad promising us the Colt 45 pistols, real one. I had a brown handle one, and my brother had a silver handle one, a pearl handle one. Um, and I thought about this, and I thought about creating a barrier between them. So there's this American sort of barrier there, red, white, and blue, obviously American colors, and it's just paints lashed on there in little lumps that come across as almost like little rosettes. So it became very Americana, and yet it's actually about my relationship with my brother and possibly my dad. You know, because obviously when we came to England, after my mum and dad split up, that we left. Um, After thinking about it, I wanted to the sort of the romance or the mythology of the Wild West, but I also wanted to think about the nature of painting. So combining the two, I started to use biro to create the cowboy bronco busting, facing different ways. And then I started thinking about my brothers being the cowboys and how the romance of the West. And then I realized I was creating this really weird sort of tribute to an America that almost never was. And it's almost a bit over the top with the guns and the cowboys. And I thought, well, this isn't what it's about. And thinking about it a little bit more, I realized I'd left Tonto out. And so you're erasing, you know, and then you think, oh no, I didn't mean to erase Tonto. Of course I wanted Tonto in there. When I got it out of the box, which was the secondhand toys, there was a Lone Ranger, a Tonto, and a horse. Now I think it was the old Tonto's horse. I'm almost certain of it, which was called Scout. This is, you know, me trying to remember way back when, because there was I remember silver was a white horse, and it wasn't white, it was a piebald, it was a speckled horse. And so we'd been given these gifts to play with, which I liked, and I thought they were marvelous. But since then, I've written down the side of the big figure. I lost him when I left America, and then I realized I'm probably referring to my father. So it becomes the father figure. Then I realized we got him out of secondhand box. So I put the box in at the feet of the little guy, and it's just an outline of the box. So I'll show you the picture. I'll take a picture later. And then I put Tonto in because I thought I'm not erasing Tonto. So I drew a little Tonto at the side of the, so it's sort of like there's a big figure, the small figure, and then the tiny little Tonto figure, same size as the sort of A4-ish cowboy bronco busting. So I popped Tonto in. And of course, I started to research what Kimosabi meant because I remember him saying that all the time. And I remember seeing a cartoon, I think it was Gary Larson, the guy who does the really weird, funny cartoons. And he said, when they're old and grey, and it's the Lone Ranger looking in this book and discovering the word Kimosabi means horse's ass, and being really annoyed. But I did some research, and it's either trusty friend or something like there was a few meanings, because obviously whenever you translate something, so it's almost like trusty friend, but also in other languages, they said maybe towards Spanish and stuff, it means fool. They could have been calling each other, because Tonto apparently means wild one. So he could have been saying wild one, and he could have been saying back to him Kimosabi, which means the person doesn't know anything, or the fool. So they could have been, but I think the script writers may have known that and said, look, it means either A or B. So you're playing with it being Tonto, wild one, and Kimosabi, man who knows nothing, and there's a bit of a fool. But I thought, I'm thinking, how do I, if I put that in, it starts to become a bit about the research of what does Kimosabi mean, and then if it does mean trusty friend, it's actually quite interesting because given the time, the close friendship between the Native American and the cowboy, and they supported each other, saved each other's life, and did stuff together. As I say, I couldn't suddenly take him out of the picture and forget him because he was one of the toys, and he was one of the whole idea that I mean, it's so subtle the way it seeps in that you treat everybody equally. They're all equal, and they're all, everybody should work together for the common good was the theme of almost every single, bad men were doing something, and these two would ride in and deal with it as best they can without killing people, but nevertheless usually having to resort to some form of violence, but in a very civilized way, as much as they could. But so, yeah, role models, toys, nostalgia, relationships between my father and my brother come into it. And you think, which way next? And then I'm starting to think also it needs to go back to its painterly roots. And I've put the idea that the memories are dissolving. So I've started to put those almost like you see those white bits at the top, and I put brown bits and little bits of other color. And it's the idea that it's starting to dissolve and you can half see the image. And I might drip some paint, splat some paint on there and say, look, how do I show you that memory and meaning through time are going? I'm never going to get this back. And even if I tell you it was secondhand, do I go as far as that? Do I tell you it was secondhand? Is that relevant? Do you want to know that I, had that type of upbringing where we didn't have a lot of toys? And yet they were marvelous because they represent, as I said, child playing with something and coming to terms with the world. So for me, the Lone Ranger is excellent. And I've used him before as a sort of motif. And no doubt I'll do so again. And the guns, it's, as I said, the one thing my dad promised me and I never got. So it feels like a very limited arrangement. But I've put text on and I've put Tonto on, and I don't know where it's going to go yet. But I must admit, there was a part of me that's enjoying the chess game more the more I loosen up, because I've illustrated something and now it's time to leave illustration behind.
Yeah. Yeah, that, like you said, that sort of evolution from the original thought, and then the more you look at it, the more it gets developed, and the more you start to, that memory sort of gets teased over time, and you're sort of teasing out deeper and deeper memories, and what you're putting on the canvas starts to reflect them in a profound way.
Most chess games start in a basic way, and then as they progress, when you're halfway through the game, that's where it's interesting. And I think I'm in the time frame we've got, I'm halfway through the game. Where it ends up in there is whether I won or lost. We'll look at it and go, oh, you overplayed this or you underplayed this. There will be losses, there will be sacrifices. There might even, as I say, you can often become blind to that when you're playing. When somebody takes your queen type thing and you realize you didn't see it. And the first thing was, erasing of Tonto. You can't do that. And you think, yeah, you're right. There is meaning. Somebody could come up and read that and go, oh, you're glorifying America and guns and you've erased Tonto. You go, oh God, I didn't think of that. And then you suddenly have to deal with it, and you have to move your bishop, your rook, and your knight, whatever it is, to deal with that. Otherwise, you've got a potential terrible reading that you've created. And I'm not trying to glorify guns. I'm not trying to erase Tonto, and I'm going to deal with that. And does the viewer know that I'm trying to say that this is me looking back and needing a male role model? Needing some kind of, how do you be a man, really?
Right, right. Deep, profound work.
Thank you.
Okay. Is this in the show also?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, okay,
they're all done the same group so far.
okay.
As you can see, the coming to America, and I thought I want to do me in the studio, so it's me in the studio. So that is Tam with the work at the corner, and then I started putting on these painterly bits, and some of the bits are really odd, like the red barrier at the bottom where my foot is, which is in front of my foot, and you can just see my foot through it transparently. And the blue lines lead you in, so it's a pictorial effect, but it also resembles, for me, England, because it's the Tesco bag, so it's sort of pointing me in the right direction. But it's my Englishness. But unless you come from England and know that that's the Tesco bag, you'll never get a reference. I then liked a comment that Max said, where he said, "Oh, that's the coyotes, the noise." And he said they're like LA spirit animal, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to use that, the LA spirit animal. Obviously, and then I put it in front of my own face because I didn't want it. It's not about me. It's a figure sitting there wondering and attentively with his hands together, thinking about what to do next, but not particularly. I didn't want it to be me, particularly. I mean, obviously, I recognize that from my own photograph of me and sitting in the studio. So I'm in Tam. And so I put the coyote, and I wanted it almost thinking. So I put a human hand there, just scratching at it. So it becomes related to it. And today I added the see-through ghosty form. I'm not saying why I wanted it there and how I wanted it, but the idea that by creating art, there's always this element of being, for me, to be you're trying too hard. You're slinking around, trying to get in there, get your work seen, get your ideas across. And it can be very odd. I mean, there was the painting in the background, and I put that big black chunk there to hide it, but you can see through. You can see that there are actually, I started putting bits that are references, like near my head. That's a reference to the way Max works. And then I put Felix the cat stencils on it. Once again, that I'm being trivial and silly, and he's laughing about it, because I do find that I feel a bit of an imposter when I'm painting and drawing. And I put these in, and then I realized I tried to spell coyote, got it wrong. And then I thought that was actually quite funny, the idea of your ignorance of something. And then I realized I can spell coyote. Of course I can.
Yeah.
And then that blank, once again, it was that coming to America is about the disconnect. We don't have coyotes running wild. We don't, because I hadn't spelled coyote in so long, I'd forgotten it. And that disconnect, that stepping away, I think that was a reference to the art practice. That you try and give people references and ideas and meaning, and they may or may not get it. And even if they do get it, they may not like it, and they might go, "Oh, you know, you know." So it's an attempt to look at me thinking about painting and and playing with it to such a point where I'm enjoying all the elements that are going on, and it's how much do I want to do next? Whether the eyes of the coyote, shall I really focus on them? Shall I add more bits? Shall I add painterly bits? You know, I was starting to really enjoy the painterly bits, like that, the smeared red and spray painted pink and letting it drip, and I enjoyed that just as much as I did, say, drawing the knee of the figure.
Mhm.
So,
Well, it's interesting too, because the slang for the person that brings you over the border is coyote. Yeah.
somebody
So
told me that, and I kind of really liked it because I said I didn't know that, but I actually know
yeah.
it. Uh, and I kind
Yeah.
of like it, you know, the person who transports you somewhere else across borders. And I'm thinking, nice meaning.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
works. And
And the cross out is very Basquiat too, like that idea of word that's, and he left it, crossed it out, added it, the addition of language or writing on a piece gives it a very different feel also.
yeah, and you hit exactly the nail on the head with the Basquiat quote. It is an Easter egg for people who know. So if you don't know, you kind of go, why has he done that? And then if you do know, you mean to go, oh yeah, we've seen that before in the pop art, and it was good. The energy of Basquiat was brilliant. I'm a great fan. Am I wanting to reference him? Yes. Do I want to copy him? No. You know.
Right.
So
Right.
so it's a little Easter egg for people to look at and go, yeah, I know why he's done that. It's it also
Yeah.
reinforces the coyote, because I didn't want people to say, they often go, oh, it's a wolf, and I thought, I'm not trying to create, I'm not some lone wolf with a spirit animal. That's just nonsense. It's not me. My spirit animal will probably be a snail or something.
Oh, but again, like that homage, kind of almost like that you did with the Wrigley and the Warhol, that sort of
Oh yeah,
recognizable piece. But like you said with the bag, people that are from the UK are going to look at that and say, "Oh, okay, that is a recognizable.
did he
That's
mean?
something I understand." Sure.
Yeah, and did he mean that? You know, because it's a feet, and the answer is yeah, it's there. It pictorially leads you in and leads the eye, but and creates shapes and stuff. But it was meant on purpose that it's a UK thing, and whether people get that or not, it's like anything with the work. You know, if a 5-year-old reads the work, it's one thing. If a 50-year-old reads it, it's another. And it also depends on your level of education, and it's not. I hope it's accessible to everybody, where everybody likes a bit of something, and then sometimes that it brings immense joy to my heart when somebody gets a reference. Like there's a little heart jump, little skips a beat type thing where you went, oh, it's like that, and I go, yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it cheers me up that somebody has got my message in a bowl. If you see what I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we've conversed, and I've sent a message, and you've got it, and it it's a great thing with art that you can have so many things and messages and ideas, and you never know if they hit home. And because obviously you do it and you send it out there, and sometimes you're lucky enough to be there or talk about it, and somebody says, "Yeah, I got that," and you go, "Where?" Because once again,
Right.
I don't want to be the guy who cracks a nut with a sledgehammer by going, "Oh, look, can you see what I've done? I've told you all you need to know." It wouldn't be a very good novel if it told you everything. It wouldn't be a very good painting if I made it too obvious. And
Right.
I think the public has to work. They have to want to work, and hopefully it holds the attention enough that it does work. If it doesn't, then I don't know. That
Yeah.
time over that person, but maybe another person will come by and go, I get that. I do love that when somebody gets it.
And I do think, you make an extraordinarily valid point, like with the Lone Ranger piece, is that sometimes it's just an exploration of your own psyche, and it's done on canvas, and whether someone else gets it or doesn't get it, it may not matter because it matters to you.
Well, it's the therapeutic part of when you start. and I start playing a game with it and thinking about it and reading it, and what happens if I go down a dark avenue or a light up. That shows you what's, even under the most simplest things, the psyche can be bubbling away, and you think, oh, I'm making references I mean, me coming to America and realizing that my father died years ago, and I didn't go to the funeral, I didn't keep in touch with him. There was too much water under the bridge, and you realize that it's still there. It's just sublimated or quiet, and you keep it down and go, oh, well, I'm not going to think about that today. Does it make it any easier? And then once you start the painting and you start thinking, and it just bubbles to the surface, and you think, do I want to tell people, oh, this is about my father? Or can they get it from that, oh, I lost him when I left America? Do they get it enough from that and go, he isn't referring to the doll, is he? He's not referring to, sorry, action figure.
The action figure.
Yeah, it's not a doll, come on. Do they get that? And the question then has to remain, like you said, how much do I spoon feed and how much do I let you go, oh, I didn't get that? And you go, come on, you must have thought that he wasn't. Whenever you play that game, you're reading a book or a novel or something, and you go, you do realize that that was a reference to something else. It's, you didn't have to take it at face value, is literal.
Right. There's some cerebral effort that is required if the capacity to do so is there. All right, let's continue. We're doing good. I think this may be the piece that the Torrance Art Museum has listed on the Studio System page of their website to indicate which artists are which artists are in the show.
Yeah, so they're using this this is typical of my work, and where it's got the street aesthetic, the stencils, the cartoons, the comics, the figurative stuff. Generally, I have a mind like a grasshopper, and it jumps all over the place. And the jumping around is what I'm interested in. And if it can be read, like one of the weirdest dreams I used to have as a recurring dream was sitting on top of a Pizza Hut sign. Oh. And I used to fly around, and God knows why, but this was happening quite a lot. I used to dream that I would go back there, and every other night I was back on top of this pizza sign. And then I took it for this guy, and I've put the sort of the hands of Mickey Mouse as wings. Mickey Mouse. They sort of, you realize it functions as a hand, but it also functions because there's two wings. And the idea of him flying around, but because it was in a dream state, also the idea of being naked and going, oh God, here I am. I'm kind of embarrassing, and putting a speed camera as the thing instead of a Pizza Hut. The idea that you can try and get around and somebody will catch you. You're trying to be too fast and too clever. There's a load of meanings, and it actually alters. So when I start painting something, and then I start thinking about it, and then I change it, and then it becomes something else, and it's the juxtaposition of all of them, and whether that can be read or not, I don't really know. I often find when people enjoy them, and I think, you must be as mad as I am. that you're getting a load out of this and going, yeah, I really like it, it's great. And you kind of go, well, I'm thinking about mortality, and I'm thinking about how we try and live our lives in a certain way. And I'm thinking about money and politics. You can see the reference to the American down the bottom.
Right.
So about the money.
Right. The little Scrooge McDuck. Right.
Waving the money around. And you kind of think, well, he's kind of going around the houses. And I am. Because I didn't want to put a stop sign there, where you think I'm trying to make a dead straight point. No, I'm trying to go from place to place to place, thinking. And it's the process of thinking where I'm illustrating it through whatever imagery I find and like. And hopefully it creates an overall gist where people do understand it and they go, this is what he's about. But yeah, that's typical of what I've been doing. I think that's still for sale on Artsy, I think.
Okay. And we have one more. This piece actually was part of your bio, but interestingly, when I was looking for your bio, and Googled you, this piece came up, and I found myself staring at it for a very, very long time, trying to sort of discern all of the different aspects of it. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when I went into education and I taught for many years, and I realized that I'd sublimated all my drive into student success, which was, it occupies all of your time. And I was writing as much of the curriculum, getting schemes of work together, thinking about what's next, and it was everything. And then I thought, hold it, I'm not producing my own work. So I started working again, and while working, I thought I wanted not to be afraid of working. There's always that moment of, what if I do this? What if I ruin it? What if I? And I thought, no, not to be bothered in the least. I will paint and paint and paint, let it bubble up, see what happens. And as you can see, I took photographs of myself, and you can see my body in there, and you can see Action Man, and you can see Jimmy Cricket. And I was painting all these things. And then I thought, right, I want a really big head at the top. So I painted out what I'd already painted with the whites and the blues. So there's stuff behind there. But it was, don't stop now. Don't be frightened.
Oh,
What if
yeah.
I wreck it? What if it goes wrong? What if no, I'm just going to do it. And if I want a giant chicken head coming out of my head, and you know what looks like Renaissance sculpture, I'm just going to do it. And it, I wanted the freedom to work, and to be honest, it was about whether it worked or not. If it works and people like it, and they go, oh, this is about him thinking, and turning around. And obviously, this isn't my face. I didn't want it to be about me in that way, but so he's a lot more handsome than I'll ever be. but I've put bits of my arm in there, and body in there and stuff like that. And I'm very fascinated by this concept of being a real boy, being real. And therefore I use Pinocchio for that, and the idea of your conscience. What's real? What's you know how do you define? How do you create yourself? How do you make yourself? So obviously that person is a massive construct of all the little bits and bobs, and if you picked him apart and said, right, what does the chicken head mean? What does the hand of Mickey Mouse mean?
Yeah.
It's
The
like,
Jiminy Cricket at the bottom.
yeah,
That's what I looked at first, I think.
following ideas. And yeah, he represents conscience, doesn't he? He
Yeah.
helps Pinocchio by talking and saying, look, you shouldn't be doing that, and you should. And I do therefore like him as a character. So not only is he cute and fun, and he's great to put in or something, but he actually does represent more of a serious issue now and again, which is our consciousness. And you realize that people think cartoons or comics aren't serious, or they don't carry weight, but they do. Everything that you're absorbing as a kid is building you as a person, and you realize that you're absorbing some pretty heavy concepts. You know, him wanting to be a real boy and then being led into the sort of sinful bad behavior, the pleasures of the flesh type thing, and then him having to gain a grip because he's turning into a donkey, and his conscience being embodied in a grasshopper. Human mind's really weird, but there is something I really like about the fact that we are so creative and bizarre. Like when somebody says to me, look, there's a bath plug that's a floating frog, and you put the bath, and you think, who originally said, do you know what that bath plug needs? A floating frog. I'm amazed every day that you see some weird little thing or some odd joke, or the human mind with its playfulness is absolutely stunning.
Yeah. And I think you bring a sense of that to the artwork that, like you said, a lot of work that we look at is very serious. And whether the work itself is serious, or when we look at it, it puts us in a serious frame of mind, because we have to be somehow, like, I don't find Rothko's whimsical at all. They're very deep and very moving and very stirring, and there's no whimsy about them. So when you look at them, you're in a particular mindset, but like, the Helen
Yeah.
Frankenthaler behind me makes me feel very different when I look at it. But your pieces, like you said, have such recognizable elements to them that elicit different feelings. Like when I see Jiminy Cricket, I think, think of one aspect of the film, and when someone else sees it, they think of another aspect. So, I think of him
Yeah.
getting him out of Monstro's belly. So, you know what I mean? It's just that whole idea that they're recognizable in the image is recognizable and sort of ignites or sparks a memory, like you were saying initially. I mean, this whole interview, I don't think I've had an interview yet where the biography matches so closely with what we've discussed, because everything that you've talked about, particularly that confusion and memory, really have just come through so clearly in the work that you've had us look at today. So
I think the main thing as well with the easily accessible stuff is meant to be a strategy that sort of sucks you in, and you're looking at it and enjoying it on a very, very almost juvenile level of enjoyment, because you think, oh, I reckon I know it. But then you're standing in front of the work and you are trying to read the rest.
right.
So, while a big serious piece like Rothko, I think you might have somebody look at it and go, well, I don't understand this, so they wanted to buy it. Whereas my strategy is that somebody will go, oh, I recognize Jiminy Cricket. And you go, well, now I'm looking at Jiminy Cricket. I'm looking at Wheel Boy, and I see Pinocchio's leg there, and I see a bloke's arm, and I see Action Man, and then I'll have a good think about it. And my hope is it's a inroad as a strategy. It's when I've made my work look trivial and silly that it's failed, because it's not an inroad anymore. It's a barrier. And the question, therefore, is have I been successful in sort of like drawing you in and getting you involved, or do you just think the work looks silly? If it draws you in and it made you think and you looked at the other bits, then it's worked as a strategy. But yeah, I'm always playing with it, the trivial, and there's a part of me that really likes the trivial.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, there's a nostalgia about it. Obviously, your work contains a lot of, nostalgia. I don't know if so. Is it safe to say then that the images that you've shared with us today, um, it's almost like a site specific installation, and that it represents your feelings about returning to America. This
Yeah.
isn't necessarily reflective of what you may create in the studio when you're back in the UK, when you go back home.
It had to be specific to the time and the place, because as I said,
Mhm.
if you're engaging your mind and you're there, and you'd go, if I went back and just said, oh, I've planned something, I'm just going to do it, or this is what I normally do. No, there is the American feel, it's the American experience. And the thing is, it opens up in a very pleasant way. And then as I dig deeper, there's some of the elements I want to that are they're personal, and they're a bit like, oh, have I resolved it? Does it relate to trauma? I've left, my mum and dad splitting up, and me not seeing my dad again, and there's that there. And how far do I go with that? Because it's an old trauma, it's an old wound, but I'm looking at the wounds and I'm putting them up, and I'm playing with it. And as I say, at this particular moment, I'm halfway, just over halfway through, and I'll take it in the direction I want, and then I'll be happy. But it's definitely a direct response to coming home and finding it's no longer home.
Yeah. What you thought it was going to be, or did you expect it? You didn't expect it to be the same,
No,
did you?
no. I mean, it's when if you're away for 5 years from a place and you go home, it's home and it's all good. If you're away for like 50 years, uh, it's not. There's dislocation. There's And as I said, if I'm starting to use it as some kind of therapy piece where I'm looking at it and thinking, one of the things I don't want it to be is just about me and my therapy. I'm hoping I can hit some universal chords about, people's experiences, so they share it with me and go, yeah, I know what you're getting at. You know, loss of a toy is not about the loss of a toy. It's about the loss of everything when you're a
Right,
kid. You've grown
right.
up. How much have you put behind you? Even in the Bible, it says something about, putting childish things away, and you think, okay. still there was a part of me that would really like that.
Exactly, exactly,
I'd
exactly.
like to talk, but if it was a real thing, imagine if you dug it out and it was somebody relative's house and they said, "Oh, we've got this." I would be able. I'd be in. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think we do. We long for what we once had, because I think it represents a different time when life was quite different, and to be quite honest, just much less encumbered. And to be able to sit down, and it's almost like when your kids are little and you can sit and play with them, because it's a little bit of a disconnect from reality. Everything sort of gets a chance to wait, and you can enter that realm of imagination and freedom and a separation of responsibility to just play. I mean, I think it's important.
I kind of bring that back with the work where I want it to have that element of play, and somebody should be able to see it and say, "Oh, he's being silly there, and he's being serious there," and you think that's play. I'm showing you in my later ability to paint and draw whatever it is, but it's actually the same early get, as I said, referring to it like a game of chess. I'm playing, and when I play, it's it's going around the houses. As I say, the people can misunderstand play as not being serious. My wife's a teacher, and she was teaching early years, and the importance of play is just huge. And
Yes,
no, it's
yes.
just you go, no, it's not play. It's meaningful.
And that trauma informed play, I mean, I think it's one of the ways that you can help children in particular, but adults as well, but children, kind of playing out their experiences, in that, like you said, that sort of playful way, but actually it's a very serious, you
They
know
can cover some serious ground while being within the safety of play. So while you're playing
exactly.
and it's safe and it's okay, you might while playing consider people, death and mortality and all sorts, and saying, yeah, but it was within the context of the game. I could always stop the game. But yeah, you endlessly see people getting into massive adventures with their toys, and then suddenly going, and they've dealt with some pretty serious things, and then gone, oh, I've put it away now. So for me, the Lone Ranger will always represent that the male role model, the threat of violence, but how you deal with things, and he is the man. How do a man's got to do what a man's got to do? Becomes the quote. I think he actually said that. I think that was another Western, but the
Yeah.
Westerns are all about the goodie and the baddie. I drew a very quick hat, and I was thinking, should I put an outline of a black hat and a white hat? The goodie, the baddie, and it's black and white as that. And it's a mythologized past that was never real. Billy the Kid was not an attractive man who was great. He was an ugly little pughead, if I can be mean to him, a little potato head, and he didn't kill like 27 people. One year it was about 5 or 6. But you think the mythology has overtaken the reality, and it has informed us, and it's been something we've all looked at, and in fact it is more real than the real because it's affecting you in a
Right,
sense. That's the
right.
step up from Andy Warhol's suit in. It's more real even if it isn't real.
Yeah.
you know so
I feel like I'm on some really good mushroom trip with you. All right, so I'm
oh
gonna
no, yeah, that's
slip
right.
to the next slide. I mean, it was very deep. I appreciate it, right? Because I think that just the taking that esoteric view, just the visual, what I'm looking at. But I think, like you said, that idea of exploration, of really working to look at a piece is super important. So I thank you very, very much for your time today. And um, we will go ahead and post this to our website and our YouTube channel. We do hope that you get over to the Torrance Art Museum before this Studio System show closes. It's hard to call it a show. It's really more like a project. Closes on the 29th of June, and that will close with a um, closing reception from 6 to 9 p.m. at the museum in Torrance. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you again next